Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And I don't know why, but for some reason the Facebook live stream returned to a title that we did a couple of days ago. So I just edited that. It's correct. Today we're talking about how the Democrats want to cancel the 4th of July. They don't want the 4th of July to happen. States that have allowed beaches and bars to reopen are closing them down again, not indefinitely, which is what you would expect if they were using the coronavirus as an excuse. They're just closing down the beaches and the bars for this weekend. These beaches and bars in places like LA, at least the beaches, will be allowed to reopen after the weekend. They just simply don't want people to be going to the beach. So we're going to be talking today about how ridiculous that is, given the fact that these are the same Democrats that applauded the fact that Black Lives Matter was protesting, right? They egged on the Black Lives Matter protesters, but now if you want to go and celebrate America, you're being deemed evil. They're basically calling you evil, as if you're trying to help other people die. You're trying to kill people. So we're going to be talking about just how ridiculous this claim is.
And we want to cancel the 4th of July. They want to cancel the 4th of July. I want you to understand how absurd it is that this small group of people speaks for 300 million people in the United States. This small group of people is telling you that you cannot celebrate Independence Day, that their plight of whatever it is, it changes. I mean, the directionality of their plight changes every day. Like we don't actually know what they want, other than they want money, right? They want free stuff. They want to be able to not work for anything. That's what they want, right? And you say, no, it's about police brutality. Then stay on police brutality. But now you want to defund the police, which is causing mass amounts of crime. You want to get rid of the 4th of July because, you don't understand the heritage. I'm sorry, I'm like getting angry now. You don't understand the culture. You don't understand the things that make this country what it is today. You don't understand it, right? Yeah. Again, you're here for one generation, maybe one generation. Maybe these people came over to the U.S. from a different country 10, 20 years ago. You have people that don't understand the sacrifices that were made to get us to where we are today. They just want to complain about everything and tell us how bad of people we are. You want to see bad? Oh, I could show you bad. I've been to countries that are bad.
Here's the thing. I agree with you, but it's not immigrants who are canceling 4th of July in these major cities. It's not first-generation residents of this country. It is Americans who are bowing down to these radical demands. We said that it was going to be a slippery slope. If you banned conservative statues, it was only going to be a matter of time before they came to this. And the same people who say that we can't have conservative statues are the ones now calling for Mount Rushmore to be destroyed, to have 4th of July canceled. We said this was going to happen. We said that this was coming.
Slippery slope.
Yeah, we're at the bottom of the water slide. It's not a slippery slope. We're at the bottom, right? They are going after Columbus Day. We'll talk about that too. Christopher Columbus. When the Democrats when far left agitators say they want to abolish Columbus Day and tear down statues to Christopher Columbus, the reason they're saying that is because they don't think that Columbus ever should have stepped foot on the North American continent. Not only are they going after our country, they don't even believe that European settlers should have ever been here to begin with. That they're trying to say that this should have been indigenous land. It should be returned to indigenous peoples. That's how radical this is. So it's not a coincidence. It's not COVID-19 that's doing this. These people want to cancel 4th of July because they're anti-American, right? If it was COVID-19, they wouldn't just be closing the beaches for this weekend. They'd be closing the beaches indefinitely. right? If it was COVID-19 related, they'd say no fireworks indefinitely instead of saying just no fireworks this weekend. It's obvious. The anti-Americanism is obvious, and yet we're still being told that they have legitimate reasons for it. We want to get your opinion on this. What do you think about this push to ban 4th of July? Call us toll-free at 888-441-1121.
Max, they're not canceling my 4th of July. They're not canceling it. They're not. I personally will fight for a lot of things, right, related to our country, right? So I will fight for equality. I will fight for someone I don't know if I feel that there's an injustice put against them. I'll just do those things. It's a part of my ethos, part of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
I will fight like hell to protect the 4th of July, right? I mean, just understand this. And we've talked about the fact that Facebook and Google and Amazon, they've weaponized technology against us. They're buying into different avenues of technology, then pushing it in the marketplace, and then they punish certain groups of people that they want to punish with impunity. They could just do whatever they want. And they say, oh, it's private enterprise, right? Well, it's actually not private enterprise, right? Based on the fact that they're basically they're creating an entire the Death Star of technology in order to promote an ideology, a sick ideology, right?
Yeah, but this isn't about that. This is about them saying that it's okay to go outside if you're going to protest for Black Lives Matter and demonize white supremacy.
Right.
It's okay for you to do that, but it's not okay for you to go outside and root for America and celebrate America.
No,
right? It's
not.
okay to go
It's
outside
anti-American.
and protest police. It's not okay to go outside and have a religious gathering. We've been talking about this for the last couple months. It's the hypocrisy is obvious. And we talked about this, that New York City was actually sued for allowing Black Lives Matter protesters to protest to go forth, but restricting
Churches.
Catholic and Jewish religious services. I want to play this cut because Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York was asked whether he found that to be hypocritical. And he said that it was apples and oranges. There's no comparison between fighting for Black Lives Matter and going to church. So let's play cut 2.
I ask you about a court decision from last week. A federal court ruled that you and Governor Cuomo violated the Constitution by restricting religious services during the lockdown of the pandemic. The court said you openly discouraged religious gatherings and threatened religious worshipers and sent a clear message that mass protests are deserving of preferential treatment, essentially saying that you treated the protesters who were on the streets differently than the religious gatherings that were on the streets. Your reaction?
No, just wrong. We worked with the religious leadership of this city
it's wrong.
for months. Cardinal Dolan in the Catholic Church and so many other religious leaders who were in full agreement that it was not time to bring back religious services because of the danger it would cause to their congregants. The protests were an entirely different reality, a national phenomenon that was not something that the government could just say, go away. It's something that really came from the grassroots.
Oh, but they can tell churches to go
it had
away.
Profound meaning, and we're all acting on the meaning of those protests. But it's really apples and oranges. Our religious leaders were the first to say it was not time to bring back services. Now we're doing it carefully, smartly. So I think that decision profoundly misses what the very religious institutions themselves were saying.
Let's talk about where we are.
Hey, listen.
Okay, so
wait a minute.
No,
Time
go
out.
ahead.
They were sued. This is
Yeah,
a
they lost.
lawsuit that was brought against them. Religious leaders are telling us that, hey, listen, we agree with you, so they sued you. They sued you, but they agreed with you. They're morons, and there are actually people out there that are listening to these morons. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. The federal judge ruled that they violated the Constitution when they made it harder for the religious to gather and easier for protesters to walk in the street. That violated the Constitution and placed unreasonable restrictions on religious gatherings. It was ruled unconstitutional. They were demanded to stop their practices. What he's saying here is that, it's okay because a couple of priests said they wanted it that way. No, you don't get to violate the rights of everyone because a few people are okay with it.
But that is the
You just
mantra.
don't
That is what they're creating. They're letting this small group of people actually dictate what the rest of us actually do. And the strong are staying silent, Max. They're staying silent. We have got to get to the point where we stop staying silent. We can't stay silent. We can't. We've got to be willing to stand up to them and punch them in the mouth. And I don't mean proverbial. It's a proverbial punch them in the mouth. I'm not saying that, hey, we just start punching people in the mouth. But we've got to start standing up. We've got to start standing up. We've got to, at some point, this has to be important enough that we have people like him that absolutely make zero sense. There's no logic in what they're saying. There's no logic in what happened in Seattle. There's no logic in letting somebody tear down a fence and walk in and have the media come out and justify their behavior. But if you look over and over and over again, and last night I did a bunch of research. I just took the top 50 articles about the Chaz, about Black Lives Matter protests, and I just did an analysis of those 50 articles and the people that wrote them. Max, this is disturbing. Nearly 90%, 88-ish% of those people literally are foreigners. They're people that they're not American.
But the foreigners aren't the ones who are canceling 4th of July celebrations. It's people like Bill de Blasio. It's people like Garcetti in Los Angeles. It's people like Mayor Bowser in D.C. saying that, no, we shouldn't have 4th of July. If you live in D.C., D.C. is telling people don't go outside and celebrate 4th of July. So it's not some foreign infiltration forcing this on us. This is interior. This is our own people, Democrats, elected officials, American citizens who are now stopping 4th of July celebrations, right? I want to play this. This is a clip of what the protests look like in Manhattan, in New York this week, the same week that New York City is saying it's too dangerous for civilians to celebrate 4th of July. I want to show you what they were enabling with these protests to defund the police. Let's play cut 3.
That's not an American flag.
So, and Mr. Producer Josh, throw up image number 3. This is a site from outside of New York City Hall. And these are people basically doing a sit-in and basically refusing to leave unless the New York City Council gives in to their demands. That is what it looked like outside of New York City Hall. To say that it is too dangerous to go to the beach, but leftists are allowed to put out their beach towels right in the middle of the street, it's insane. There is no legitimate argument for it. There just isn't, right? And that's why New York lost that lawsuit. That's why New York lost the lawsuit, because you can't defend it. It's indefensible. The only excuse is anti-Americanism. You cannot argue that it's safe to be Black Lives Matter. It's not safe to celebrate the United States. You just can't make the argument. And yet that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, oh, well, no, COVID-19 and health policies demand it. We have no choice but to cancel fireworks, but to close down the beaches, but to cancel all the parades. But Black Lives Matter. But these same politicians march shoulder to shoulder with Black Lives Matter just days prior.
Right.
I don't know. It's so angering because they think we're stupid.
No, it gets worse than that. They actually came out with a study over a 4 or 5 day period of time that said that the protesters are actually slowing the spread of COVID.
That was in Colorado. Researchers in Colorado said that Black Lives Matter actually, not only did they not spread the virus, but they actually slowed it down. The argument was that because looters and rioters were out destroying their cities, that other good people like us, we didn't go outside because we didn't want to get killed by the looters and the rioters. And that fear of getting killed is what helped prevent the spread of COVID-19. That's the argument that they're making. We're also hearing that they're blaming a rise in snake bites on COVID-19 because people are going outside more and they're running into venomous snakes as they're going out and about. So they're blaming COVID-19 for snake bites. It's insane what's happening in this country and how COVID-19 is not the cause of this, right? The cause of this tyranny is not COVID-19. This tyranny has always been there. There have always been Democrats itching for a chance to cancel 4th of July, itching for a chance to topple statues of Christopher Columbus and Abraham Lincoln, to cancel Columbus Day. That has always been there, right? Democrats have always wanted this, to destroy Mount Rushmore because there's slave owners up on it. COVID-19 is giving them an opening to gain some ground in that fight. It's giving them a chance to criminalize the celebration of America. It's not COVID that's doing this. This is leftism. This is Marxism. This is the Democrat Party finally getting an opening. And what's shameful is that we're seeing GOPers bow down to these demands, bow down, attempt to appease these idiots, thinking that if they give an inch, that these Marxists aren't going to try and take a mile. It's very obvious what's happening. Did we lose Joe? We might have lost Joe. So I want to go to a clip if we can. I want to go to this. This is a clip from yesterday's New York White House press conference. I want to go to this clip because Kayleigh McEnany was asked, why is the White House moving forward with their 4th of July celebration if the District of Columbia has recommended it not go forward? Let's play cut 1.
Today, Mayor Bowser said her office is communicating with the Department of Interior about the 4th of July celebration, and it's not, in her mind, in keeping with CDC guidelines, as well as DC Department of Health guidelines. The White House has said over and over again we should look to our local authorities for how we should act. Should the administration be following the local guidelines in this?
The president has said that we should follow our local authorities with masks, so that's the decision that he encourages people to follow those authorities. The CDC guidelines, I'd also note, say recommended but not required, and we are very much looking forward to the 4th of July celebration. Yes.
So here we have the media asking why the White House is moving forward with okay.
I'm back. So
why the White House is moving forward. Wait, you missed all that, so
I did.
You weren't here.
No, I wasn't.
Let me explain what just happened.
All right.
The White House just was asked a question by a reporter of why they're moving forward with their 4th of July celebration if the D.C. city government is asking them not to, and trying to throw it in their face that the White House says to follow local guidance, actually trying to insinuate that D.C.'s city council has the right to cancel federal 4th of July celebrations.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come back to that for a minute, but I had to keep a guy on the phone for 60 seconds who was making death threats and making racial slurs and doing all that stuff, so that we could actually do some tracking, which we've been working on. So we've been getting death threats pretty consistently over the last couple weeks from these clowns, and over the last couple months. And so we were told, keep them on the phone. So I actually got off of this to keep them on the phone so that I could go through and have them do a track on them, it works to our advantage. But I want you to know there are sick people out there that do not want what we are doing. That they don't want to get this voice out there. They don't want to actually fight against the establishment and these people that are weaponizing the media. So I want everyone to hit the share button. It looks like we got about 900 or so people that are actually listening. If all 900 of you can actually hit the share button and share it with your friends and family, share it with the people that are around you, we can actually get this message out. No death threat. I actually told the guy on the phone, I was like, look, do you want my address? I can give you my address. Are you close by? I mean, do you want me to invite you in? And I did that and then told him he was a word. I can't tell you what I said, but I incited him a little bit so he keep going. But the point is that we're not going to be deterred, right? We're not going to stop what we're doing. We're not going to stop talking. Yeah. And we're certainly not going to bow down to some dirtbag that wants to run his mouth to us, right? I just told him to go back to his MS-13 buddies and, good luck to you. Yeah.
No, it's incredible. We're talking about today's podcast is about celebrating the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Which it's not very controversial. So, but there are people out there, both in Facebook throttling this, YouTube throttling this.
Yeah.
We are on Parler now. So if you're on Parler, make sure you follow us, and we'll follow you back. Go to @ConservativeDaily, all one word. But there are people out there, not just in these tech companies, but also just out and about trying to gum up our phone lines with death threats, fake calls to stop people from getting on the air, and stop us hope from talking about this. And it's all because we say that people should be allowed to celebrate 4th of July. That is what we are up against. That is what we're up against, which is why it's so important to hit that share button, hit the like button, and do leave comments so we can make sure this gets in front of more people. Because you don't want that kind of terrorism to win, because that's what that is. They're trying to instill fear on us. That's
100% terrorism. 100%. And I just had to take a little bit of time to basically tell them, now I'm glad they're listening. Maybe we can actually get through to them. But I want you to understand that this is what we're up against. There's an ultimate evil that we're up against. And Max, we've had a couple people say, Joe, are you going to go on video? The answer is yes, I am going to go on video. You're finally going to be able to see my face after 11 years. So I'll be right here next to Max over the next couple weeks. We'll get that actually handled. I want to make sure that I have all the tools in place to make sure that I can combat the tech giants. We are going to be executing some lawsuits, make sure that we have legal on staff. But people want to know and they want to be able to see me. I understand that. I want you to see me. But I want to make sure that I have the ability to fight against the machine as they come after me. Right? So that'll happen. And everyone will be able to see my smiling face and not so smiley face when I get really angry or passionate about something. Right? So I want to say it again. Share. If everyone shares, I saw that we had another 10 shares. I want everyone to share. Just keep sharing it, right? Because we have to break what they're trying to do, which is stop us from having a voice. They want to take away our 4th of July. They want to rewrite history. They want to tell us that they're trying to segregate people is really what they're doing. So through this idea of equality, they want to create segregation, and which I think is a real problem in our country. So
I want to real quick read a letter because I've been going through this because they're trying to make the 4th of July, Independence Day, out to be some racist holiday. They're saying it's a holiday created by racists for racists to perpetuate systemic racism. That's what the left actually claims. They're saying don't celebrate 4th of July. So I know that's a lie, but I've spent the last couple of days going back and reading the papers from the Founding Fathers to see what they actually thought about this potential holiday. And I found, and a lot of people have been referring to it in recent days, but a letter from John Adams to his wife, Abigail Adams. And I want to just read a couple paragraphs from this because he sent this on July 3rd, 1776. And on July 2nd, that's when the Continental Congress voted to authorize the Declaration of Independence. It was on July 4th that the states ratified it. So he sent this letter in between. He actually thought that future generations would celebrate the Independence Day on July 2nd. Obviously, he was wrong about that. But this is what he said about the idea of honoring that Independence Day and celebrating it. He said, quote, I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as a great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction. Even although we should rue it, which I trust in God we shall not. That is John Adams, future president, talking about how future generations should celebrate the 4th of July, not as a symbol for racism, but as a celebration of a free people declaring independence from colonial overlords, because this was a very dangerous thing what they were doing. They signed their death warrants when they signed this Declaration of Independence. So it's just amazing to see how the left is trying to paint this as racist. I think we do have an image, Mr. Producer, if you can throw up image number 2. This came from the Democrats' Twitter account. They said Trump has disrespected Native communities time and again. He's attempted to limit their voting rights and block critical pandemic relief. Now he's holding a rally glorifying white supremacy at Mount Rushmore, a region once sacred to tribal communities. They deleted that tweet because the rally glorifying white supremacy is a 4th of July fireworks celebration.
Right.
That's how they call it. That's what they called it. That's the Democrat Party.
This is the reality. Yeah. This is the reality.
It is. Yeah.
And here's the problem, Max. So I was on a podcast. Somebody asked me, not a podcast, excuse me. It was an actual TV show, and they asked me to come on this TV show and talk about some of the things that we're doing to, give power back to the people at the state level and in the community, so they can start to suppress these voices that are trying to tell them who they actually what they have to represent, right? And literally. Literally, as we're sitting there talking about this, somebody actually walked in. Somebody walked into the lobby and said, "You guys are just a bunch of terrorists." And so I happened to get up right after the show was done, and I walked out and I just started talking to the guy. And he goes, "Oh, you're a white guy and you're a racist, and all you want to do is kill black people." Right. This is actually what the guy was saying to me. So I let him go through this diatribe for like 20, 25 minutes. Right. I'm talking to him and I was like, well, what makes me a racist? I'm very calmly talking to him. He's getting more and more elevated, more and more angry. And finally, I looked at him and I was like, well, do you know who I am? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, let me tell you who I am. And then I told him about my history and I asked him about his history. And he goes, well, I'm graduating from college. And I asked him, I go, where are you getting your information? He goes, I get a lot of my information from my professors. And so I'm going through this discussion with him, and then I said, so would it surprise you if I told you my dad is black and my whole family's interracial, and I fought racism for a long time from the trenches, and because I'm white, I look white, I have the ability to get myself in environments where people say that they're for equality, and then when we get behind closed doors, they treat me as if I'm this insider. And they say really negative things, and I take a picture out of my wallet and I say, "Hey, this is my dad, this is my family," and that usually is the end of the relationship. And I've blown up big opportunities. I've taken opportunities where I could have made millions of dollars in different business deals because I will not deal with someone who is a racist. I will not put myself in a position where all the things that my family experienced growing up would become something that I'm willing to step on, or I'm willing to not remember. And he instead of actually talking back to me in that situation and saying to me, "Hey, look, that sounds terrible. Let's talk more about it." And what I was trying to do as a negotiator and doing things that I've done on foreign soil, he started attacking me again, saying that's not true. Your dad's not black. You're lying to me. So I took my phone out and I just tried to FaceTime my parents, right? And at that point, then it didn't become about that. It came about the fact, well, how can you actually support them? So their argument keeps moving, right? It's a moving target. And every time they say something on the left, it's this deflection. And my problem with it is that there are people on the left that are confused. There are people on the left that are actually being taught
that's the understatement of the century.
Yeah, but they're being fooled by something that should make them feel good that doesn't do good. Something that makes them feel good to fight against something that any one of us would fight against that doesn't exist. It's like having a boogeyman in your closet. You close the closet door because you don't want the boogeyman to come out. The boogeyman does not exist. Now, that doesn't mean racism doesn't exist. It just means that you can't have a revisionist history and strip us of of what we've represented for the last 500 years and say that it's all bad. And that is what they're doing. The same thing that happens in places in the Middle East that I spent a lot of time in, that tried to say death to America, death to America, death to America. That is a real thing, right? And that methodology, that message, I'm not worried about Russia. I'm not worried about Russia. I'm worried about extremist ideologies that are creeping into our culture by infecting our religious institutions, by infecting our leadership, and by infecting our education system for our kids. Now, I think that kids are actually waking up, but I will tell you this. Some of these people were fooled, and by the end of that conversation, after 25 minutes, I went literally and I gave them a handshake-ish type thing where I brought them in, and I was like, look, listen, you don't understand what's happening to you. You are conflicted. And the reason why you're conflicted is because you don't want to see injustice. Now, what I'm going to tell you is injustice is a part of our life. It's a part of what life is all about, is that you're going to have to face it, but you face it individually.
I know, but it's not 4th of July. That's the whole point. This is the problem. They take what they experience in one area and they assume that same racism is prevalent everywhere. Yes. And that 4th of July is racist. Joe, one of the reasons that they want to take down George Washington's statue is to oppose colonialism.
Right.
They want George Washington help free the United States from our colonial overlords, right? When you see these anti-colonial, basically, but they're talking about colonialism, like European powers subjugating black and brown people, is what they say in Africa and Asia and Central and South America. They try and lump George Washington in with that same crowd. Like, oh no, we have to topple George Washington's statue because he was a colonialist. George Washington fought to free the 13 colonies from colonial rule.
Correct.
It's so insane. These
Correct.
people, like when we talked about how they tore down abolitionist statues.
Yeah.
They tore down one gentleman statue in Wisconsin who not only was he an abolitionist, not only did he fight on the side of the Civil War and die in the Union Army, but before the Civil War he was in a militia that actually fought back against slave catchers trying to reapprehend slaves that had fled north. They should have been praising him, but they tore him down because he was a white male, and they just assumed that made him part of that white male patriarchy, colonial patriarchy
Right.
that subjugated everyone. And then that's responsible for all their problems, right? So I don't want to talk today about how people feel that there's racism, because it's so idiotic to claim that 4th of July is racist, to claim that 4th of July is too dangerous because of COVID-19. It has nothing to do with that. They're just anti-Americanism.
Max, you have to concentrate on the causation. You have to concentrate on that the 4th of July is just yet another symptom of this warped world to take away who we are as Americans and where it's rooted in. It is rooted in people that are not American. I'm sorry, that's truth. That is absolute truth. These are people that want to take away and strip our identity away from us and shame us. And it does not start on the soils in the U.S. It does not start here.
It does. It does. It absolutely does. Joe, I had college professors who were American citizens, right? Second, third generation Americans who were teaching that Columbus Day is a racist holiday.
Right.
It's a colonial holiday. It's a subjugative holiday.
You're right.
That's not foreigners. That there are stupid, idiotic Americans.
There
right?
are. Where do they get that? Where do they get that information, though? Where do they get it? I can tell you where they get it. I was in the middle of it, Max. I was in the middle of it. And let me finish. I was in the middle of it. I was overseas I spent 65 nations I went to in that 6.5 years, right? 65 nations. Every time I'd get there, I would find Western organizations that were being influenced, funded, given money. And by the way, those organizations came back to the United States and said, oh, you guys, you misunderstand this, or you misunderstand this, or we're bad people. This is where it starts. It starts with influences on the outside that help fund and infiltrate people's minds on the inside. And then those weak minds go out there, and because they have a platform and because they actually have money, funding from these outside sources, I saw it over and over and over again, right?
I know, but like seeing terrorist groups or radicals in the Middle East tearing down statues to Hinduism or Buddhism, right? Seeing what Boko Haram does and all these other terrorist groups do, that didn't cause Senator James Lankford and Ron Johnson yesterday to introduce legislation to abolish Columbus Day.
Yeah, no.
Like, right?
It didn't.
Like, no foreigners did that.
But you're wrong, Max. You're wrong.
James Lankford is a pasty white boy with red hair.
It doesn't matter. You're trying to get to the day today. You're having, this is the problem with conservatives. This is the problem right now. What you're saying is the problem is that you can't look at you look at the symptom, you look at the person, and all of a sudden your memory goes back 1 month. Your memory goes back 2 months. It doesn't go all the way back to this process where they developed an entire strategy that is a long-term strategy over decades. Right? They say, we're going to, over 20 years, do this to destroy America. We say, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. That's not where it came from. He's a pasty white guy. He just wants to get rid of it because he's an American. I'm telling you where it came from. I'm telling you where it came from. I'm telling you where it came from.
Listen.
I'm telling you where the strategy actually started, right? It didn't just wake up one day and some pasty white guy or someone on the side said, oh, listen, I actually think we need to get rid of Columbus Day. It's a slow erosion of who we are as a country. We give one little bit thinking that, hey, this makes me feel good. I want a virtue signaling. Virtue signaling has been the thing that has happened over the last 3 to 4 decades. It's happened. And they test the message in front of churches, and they test the message and to Western groups that are funded by fundamentalists not in the United States. And you could say, no, they're not. I'm going to tell you 100% they are. 100%.
I'm not saying that they're not. But I'm saying that the reason that Los Angeles residents are not allowed to go to the beach this weekend is not because of foreign nationals. It's because of Mayor Garcetti, right? Foreign nationals did not cancel the firework display in Los Angeles. They just didn't. They didn't. Like the Ayatollahs of Iran, absolutely. They've wanted for decades to destroy this country. You know what the Ayatollahs are saying now? We can sit back because they're going to destroy themselves. Yes, there's absolutely illegal aliens who are pressing forward with this. Go after Columbus Day because it's anti-indigenous. That's
Right.
absolutely true, right? But the fact that 2 Republican senators introduced this bill to ban Columbus Day, to get rid of Columbus Day, it's not foreign intervention. This is a domestic movement. There could be people outside of our country that want it to happen.
It's not.
They
Look,
want it to happen.
I've read the fact text. It happens from the outside, not from the inside. And with the fact that you can't see it because it's decades old, where you were riding a tricycle when it actually happened, does not make it any less true, right? We've had this erosion that has happened.
You're going back to Al Qaeda or the Taliban destroying.
Taliban wasn't
stuff
here
in
30
the
years
mountains.
ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The Taliban was over in Afghanistan destroying monuments, right? You're trying to say that kind of thing came here.
No, I didn't.
And which is true.
No, I didn't.
Well, you've said it on the other podcast. You said it on past podcasts too that this idea of tearing down monuments and statues came from the Middle East, where they've torn down monuments and statues, right? So there is an element to that too. But the reason that you can't go to the beach, right? The reason that you can't go to the beach in Miami, but you can still get a lap dance, is not because of foreign nationals. It's because of anti-American Americans. You can say that they're not American because they don't live up to the ideals of this country, right? But
Max,
they are American citizens.
Max,
These
not.
are American policymakers.
Look, I sat in a room.
Foreign nationals.
Yes, I can.
Foreign nationals
Yes,
made
I can.
a policy in Miami to ban the beach, but to keep strip clubs open. That's not foreigners. That's our idiot politicians that we elected.
You sound like a liberal when you go all the way that far, because that's not what I said, right? And so if you want to actually attack what I said, you can attack it for what I said. And that is that the ideology, this extremist ideology that crept into our education system, that crept into our very way of life as a country, came from the outside. Now, you could tell me it didn't, but I got to sit in those meetings. I got to sit in meetings with the Chinese. I got to sit in meetings with people in the Middle East and in Africa and in Asia and in Europe. I sat in those meetings. I walked through it. I saw it happening. It was not very difficult to see, right? Especially when organizations that I'm there to help, right, are being muled into this idea that this is what's really happening in America. And by the way, I've spent time at the Harvards, the Tufts, the Oxfords. I've done that. I've done things in different areas where I know where the causation came from, and we've ignored it. And you could sit here and say that it's not, that it was homegrown. It wasn't homegrown, right? The ideas sprinted from other ideas, other places. That's truth. And you could say it doesn't, but I didn't say anything about strip clubs and beaches. I didn't care anything about that. I said the extremist ideology.
That's what we're talking about today.
Today's
podcast
ideology
is about how Americanism is being prohibited.
It
right?
is.
It's just true.
100%.
In Miami, you cannot go to the beach, but you can go to the strip club.
Correct.
And the reason that they give you is COVID-19. Beaches where there is sunlight, where there is heat, where there is humidity, all known disinfectants to kill the virus, right? Right? Booty sweat is not a disinfectant that kills the virus. And yet you're allowed to go to a strip club and get a lap dance, but you're not allowed to go to the beach. That is not because of foreign nationals. That's American. That is American Democrats who run that city making that decision. Now we can go back. We go all the way back, right? We go all the way back.
No, you can't go back.
But you can't go back. You can't tell me that 30 years ago the Chinese spreading propaganda is why you can get a lap dance in Miami, but you can't go to the beach. You can say it's maybe linked, but isn't foreign nationals doing this, right? Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., is not a foreign national. She might kowtow to foreign nationals.
Max,
she might bow down to their demands. But her telling people to stay home on 4th of July, it's not an external threat. We have this internal problem.
No. You have to understand where it came from. I don't even know where the stripper and everything came from. We're talking about the 4th of July. We're talking about Columbus Day. We're talking about holistically what's happened in the United States, right? So you can talk about individual erosions. No. Okay, you talk. I'm done talking. You talk. Go ahead, Max. Well, no, you talk. Go ahead. You talk. Go ahead. I'm done.
You can't tell me that I'm just coming out of left field. We're talking about how beaches are being closed, but you're allowed to do other things. It's completely salient to the conversation. Go ahead.
You done?
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Tell me how foreigners are closing beaches.
It has nothing to do with closing beaches. That's the narrowness of what you're minded. This is why the left wins, is because you can't actually get to the causation of what's happening in the erosion. They're attacking every aspect of our society. We walk over here, it's like playing whack-a-mole. Walk over here, bam, we got to worry about beaches, how that's bad, that's that bad. We're not talking about holistically why they're doing this and where it comes from and how long it's been happening, right? They are literally changing people's mindset to where logic is not logic. And that, by the way, did not come because Americans woke up one day and said, oh my gosh, we're terrible people. That came from the outside. We have been attacked as a country for decades because of the amount of success we've had as a nation, because of the strength of our military, because of the strength of our economic condition, the strength of what we build in industry. Like, we have been attacked and eroded. And by the way, it is a strategy. I don't want to talk about the beaches right now. I don't want to talk about strip clubs because frankly, no, the podcast is about canceling the 4th of July. I'm looking at it right now. Yes. Democrats canceling the 4th of July. And I'm getting to the causation behind why the 4th of July was actually canceled. And it's been canceled because we have ignored and concentrated on individual problems and not looked at where it's coming from. And the fact that these people that are in our education system, like it or not, I don't care if they're from Scotland or I don't care if they're white, green, yellow, purple with webbed feet. That makes no difference to me. What makes a difference to me is that they ignore history. They ignore the sacrifices that have been made as a country because they're un-American at the core, because the ideology that it comes from is not American. It didn't sprout up here. One day somebody started planning something and saying, I read a book and I think this is what we should do. Nope, they've been actually concentrating on rules for radicals for generations of how they could actually influence and destroy everything we stand for as a nation. That's truth. That's reality. I see it. I know it happens. And I've been a part of watching this kind of sentiment grow. I've seen it in 100 different ways.
And that can be true. But like the push to remove Christopher Columbus's statue came from Native Americans, from the indigenous community, saying that he's racist, and white liberals in colleges agreeing, right? That's the extent of that. It's not the Chinese, it's not other countries. I mean, maybe they play a role in fostering this, but these are domestic ideas that Christopher Columbus is racist because he was bad to the indigenous population. He was bad to the natives. That he never should have been here. We shouldn't honor him. We shouldn't glorify him because he was anti-native. That came from white liberals in universities and Native American communities inside the United States. It did not come from anything else. That's where that came from. Now, you can say that it's spurred on by other people who want us to fail, which I absolutely agree, that there are outside actors who want us to burn to the ground. Like all across the world, we look at the propaganda being spewed by China and Russia. They just want us to rip ourselves apart.
And they're doing a good job of it.
But they didn't plant that seed that Columbus is racist. That came from white liberals in universities, and it came from the indigenous people, Native Americans, who still believe that this should be their land.
No,
right?
That's not true. It didn't come from white liberals and universities. It didn't. It didn't come from there. It didn't. I mean, look, you have to go further back and actually look at why it actually got to the point where white liberals did not wake up one day and say, "Oh, wait, we absolutely are. We've done them wrong. We knew that we did them wrong way back when." Right? It wasn't white liberals that came up with this idea. It was the idea that we needed to make sure we took care of Native Americans. We could trace it back a couple hundred years. That's a true story, right? We recognized things that we did wrong as a country back then, and we tried to fix them as quickly as we could. There was a American movement to include Native Americans in what we have as a society and recognize that, that our history is rooted in taking stuff away from them, right? It's rooted in it. But the idea that as a nation we're evil to our core and that we can trace it back and say that as a country we're a bunch of bad people. That did not come from within our country. It just didn't. This ethos that we're bad and that everyone's racist and
I think you're giving Democrats too much credit.
No, I'm not.
I think you're giving Democrats too much credit. You're basically saying that they aren't evil enough to come up with these ideas themselves. I think you're giving them too much credit.
No, I'm telling you right now, I'm not giving them too much credit. I know that this is a problem, and if you spend any amount of time in other countries, you will see it. It will become very evident. And the amount of time that I've spent in foreign soils talking to, number one, foreign leaders, number two, people in positions of power and authority. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's very difficult if you have that experience.
You can't say that you've traveled through the Middle East and North Africa and that Christopher Columbus's statue in Columbus, Ohio came up in conversation.
And again, you just want to concentrate on one deal so you can win an argument. You can't win the argument because you don't have the experience. Simple.
In Boston, Massachusetts, a local council voted unanimously to remove a statue of Abraham Lincoln because the black man in the statue being freed was kneeling. The pressure to remove that came from African Americans living in Boston and the liberals who agreed with them, right? That is stupid. That is radical. It is idiotic. And if we don't stop it, it will clearly spread. But to say that there are foreign actors causing that statue to be removed in Boston, maybe you can trace it, right? I have no doubt that there's propaganda being pushed into it. But at the end of the day, it was unanimous. Right, China, Russia, all these foreign actors did not make that unanimous, right? Liberals did that because they're stupid, they're idiots, right? They think that Abraham Lincoln can be racist while they also want to celebrate him signing the Emancipation Proclamation with Juneteenth, right? It makes no sense. There's no logic there. I think you're giving liberals too much credit to basically suggest that if it wasn't for outside influences, that we wouldn't be where we are today. I think we'd be in the same place.
No,
I think we'd be in the exact same place.
Nope.
I think that the anti-Americanism is so deep in the Democratic Party, right? Like when the Democrat Party removed God from their party platform, that was not like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia putting influence into the country, or China or Russia. That was atheists within the Democrat Party saying that God shouldn't be in our platform, right? We can point to individual things.
You could be no more wrong than what you are right now. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, and by the way, the globalism that's happened, I'll let you talk, you're going to let me talk. The globalism that has actually been created over the last couple decades has absolutely pointed to and created the divide that we have as a country, right? It has. And if you go to Europe, spend any amount of time in Europe, any amount of time, right, in the EU, any amount of time, you will actually see the erosion that has happened there. And the same thing that has happened there came here. It's not like it started here and it came there. Everything that you're seeing happen in Europe is actually happening here. People living on the streets, putting tents everywhere, all of that stuff happens there first. It happens there first, right? Germany actually being the powerhouse behind the EU that led to England actually, or the UK to Brexit, right? All of that traces back to this globalism that is meant to weaken those environments holistically. That's what's happening. And that's what they're doing with us. They want to break us down to the point where America becomes part of something bigger so that we can actually be a level playing field, so that we're no longer a superpower. And all of that happened outside of our country. Now, you can say it didn't cause them to tear down a statue. Today, it did not. Today, it did not. But if I go back decades, right? If I go back to even the principles of rules for radicals, if I go back to any of that stuff that they actually brought into it, it was caused on the outside. And I've spent an enormous amount of time. Look, I do research. I'm a math guy. I love it, right? If I spent any more time on this right now, I'm not going to convince you because you can't see it. The same way that the liberals...
Saul Alinsky was an American. He was born in Chicago. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. Like, he was American. Like, you can't, like, Rules for Radicals was written by an American Marxist, right?
The problem is that, oh my gosh.
The push to get rid of Columbus Day, you're right, you can trace it back decades. The first time that happened was in South Dakota, where they create Indigenous Peoples Day as an alternative to Columbus Day. That was in 1989. You can't say that happened because of foreign influence. It was Native American communities in South Dakota that wanted Indigenous Peoples Day. right? It wasn't some foreign actors. You can't say it's globalism because we weren't really in the age of globalism as we are now back then. It was still just beginning. We still had American industry. It wasn't being stripped from us, right? The way globalism rules this world today was not that way in the 1970s and 80s. We were much more internalized with our economics. We had much less foreign entanglements when it came to China and Europe, right? We built things back then. We didn't have that Chinese pressure coming in at us back then, right? So, like,
you're wrong.
South Dakota.
You're wrong.
So South Dakota created Indigenous Peoples Day in 1989 because of foreign influence.
The problem is, Max, is you concentrate on one thing and you do it from a place of no. You can't see the forest through the trees. So, tell me about Saul. Tell me about Saul. Tell me about Saul specifically.
He's actually using evidence.
No, you're not. You said he was born in Chicago.
All you're saying is that you're sitting in meetings and you're hearing things. I'm telling you, Saul Alinsky was born in Chicago in what, 1909? Are we saying that he's some Manchurian candidate? No. We have idiots in this country, and they are American idiots, and they hate this country.
I'm done. You don't get it, Max, because you think you know everything. I'm sitting here telling you, Saul came from, by the way, his parents immigrated here from Russia, right? They did.
So he's a Russian?
If I go back in time, he wrote something that's basically the equivalent of a communist manifesto to actually bring communism, bring that radicalism into the U.S. You don't think he was influenced from people around him? You don't think that happened? Well, I'm going to tell you how it was influenced. Okay. Again, you think you know everything, Max, so you just take over, do everything you want. I'm done for the day. Hey, guys, it's been fun.
Is this really happening right now? Like, of course that foreigners influence things, right? It happens all the time. But we have idiots in this country. We have American idiots. We have American idiots who are the ones doing this, right? You can't go to the beach in L.A. because the idiot mayor of L.A. says you can't. And you can only not go there on 4th of July. You cannot go to the beach in L.A. on 4th of July weekend. I'm sorry. I don't think that's foreign influence. I think we can talk about that. It's absolutely true that there are foreign influences guiding a lot of these leftist decisions, but we can't lose track of the fact that there are idiots, leftist idiots in this country who have homegrown idiotic ideas that we have to push back on as well. Well, that's going to obviously, I guess, be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that you can download the podcast on the Apple Podcasts if you have an iPhone, as well as the Google Play Store if you have an Android. You can also find us on the Podbean app, as well as conservative-daily.com/podcast. Please do download the podcast. Please do subscribe. It really helps us as we try to grow the channel. So again, my name is Max McGuire. Thanks for Joe Otto for being on today. And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.